Okay, Megavanan everyone, and welcome to something that's, well, pretty different from, what I usually do, I guess. When I do these kind of videos, it's normally like either I'm giving my thoughts or a trailer reaction video. This time I thought that I would watch for the first time this IGN review of M3gan 2.0. I saw the first M3gan and I liked it. I thought it was very, very cool. This one also looks really good in a different kind of direction, whereas the other one was more of a horror film. This one seems like they kind of went like almost like the Terminator 2 route, where it became more of an action, film. So, I wanted you guys to see this maybe, and so you have an idea of, the thought process, I guess, that goes through my head as I watch these things. Reviews by, IGN, GameSpot, and, even, of course, back in the day with game trailers, was that G4, or rather G4, right, when they would do their reviews. But, things like that. And I will maybe kind of talk about it a little bit, okay? So, and what I think of the review, even though I haven't seen the film yet, okay? Yeah, it's recording.
Hey, so remember the time I strangled you and set the lab on fire?
There was a time when horror mascots took multiple movies to find their way to icon status. But from the moment M3gan sashayed her way toward impaling Ronnie Chang, it felt like the dancing murder robot had years of sequels and snark ahead of her.
I take almost no pleasure in this.
Her limitless reserves of generative smartassery and a tendency to break into song, along with her thematically rich echoes of the real-world debate over artificial intelligence, plug directly into M3gan 2.0, which widens the scope and ups the ante of its predecessor, while adding some new ideas and even different types of movies into its programming.
I forgot that actress name,
though.
though.
Any big update, some errors have crept their way into the code.
I do like her, though.
I think we can
I've seen her in a couple things besides the Star Wars.
I care too much.
Actually, the biggest mistake you made was murdering 4 people and a dog.
At the very top of the sequel's patch notes is a crystal clear modulation of genre. From the moment the words "somewhere on the Turkish-Iranian border" are splayed across M3gan 2.0's very first shot, it's clear what's to follow will be a far cry from the relatively modest, tongue-in-cheek horror movie that preceded it. So long to the robo-rampage that merely threatened the lives of anyone who got between the fabulous super toy and her human charge Katie. Hello to the global threat posed by the military-grade android Amelia. Amelia's murky motives put her on a collision course with Katie, her aunt/adoptive mother Gemma, and eventually M3gan. And Ivana Sakno gets off to a good start in the role, with a cold and imposing stature bearing none of the campy, parasocial bestie vibes that M3gan
I like
invites.
her.
But as her goal starts to take shape,
I think it was called The Spy Who Loved Me. I really liked her that one as well.
Amelia a compelling character in her own right. No, this is very much an upgraded villain limited to a T-1000 search and destroy ethos. We're going to get back to Terminator in a minute here, because there's a lot to say about that. A few years on from M3gan's buggy and bloody launch, Gemma and Katie have found a more stable domestic groove. And with that,
this is
ways
my
to cope.
banana strawberry milkshake. I made it myself in the blender with ice cream and stuff.
Gemma advocates for
quite
digital
good.
detoxing, while Katie studies the attack-diverting martial art of Aikido. And Allison Williams and Violet McGraw have a believable parent-teen dynamic
it is a
that
Wing
gives
Chun
director
dummy.
Gerard Johnstone something
Therefore,
to come
it must
back to
be
as the
Wing
stakes
Chun.
rise to apocalyptic proportions.
Amelia's stronger than you can imagine.
M3gan wasn't subtle about positioning its titular character as a stand-in for an over-reliance on smart devices. And M3gan 2.0 similarly hammers us over the head with emphatic pleas against unchecked AI. That's a well-intentioned and salient
like a laser
point,
gun. I like
but
that.
it's expressed through a
Laser beam
cartoonishly extreme
gun thing. I
yin-yang
like it.
of tech bro send-ups, party animal and cybernetics magnate Alton Appleton,
Wow.
and Gemma's insufferably boring AI watchdog boyfriend, Christian. They muddy the waters with tossed-off observations about the state of the technology that feel far too one-dimensional and short-sighted. Much as M3gan's first outing paid homage to the formula of Child's Play, and here's where we acknowledge
maybe
the
I'm
existence
wrong,
of the very tech-forward
Oh, hey,
remake
Audrey
from
Plaza.
2019. M3gan 2.0's villain-turned-ally setup and pontifications on human-machine relations would have been enough to raise Terminator 2 Judgment Day comparisons on their own. By the time the characters are planning the infiltration of a tech campus,
Megan, stay low. This is supposed to be a stealth mission.
it feels like Johnstone is just a little too beholden to what many would say is one of the very best sci-fi action movies ever made. By shifting the genre
beholden.
focus,
I
Megan
like that
2.0
wording.
uses the
That's
benefit of
cool.
being a horror
I gotta
movie
find a way
using
to
great
use
jokes
that
to punch
someday.
above its weight,
Beholden.
and instead feels more like a sci-fi movie.
It means like he's
straining to
adhering
make the
too
most
much
of
to
its
like the
budget.
Terminator 2.
This can work. Happy Death Day to You took the original's time-looped
Went to
slasher concept and blew it
sci-fi
out
way.
into a full-on time travel
I like that
comedy,
series as well.
but, yeah,
Those
still involves
two
a bunch
series of
slashing.
movies.
By the way, if you haven't seen that movie, go see the Happy Death Day movies. They rock.
I like
Serviceable
those.
though Megan 2.0's action may be, and there are some occasionally clever uses
Yeah,
of
look
both
at that.
Megan and Amelia's
Some
abilities
kung
in
fu
combat.
action, which I love.
There are only so many Black Ops goons that they can knock out or run through with sharp objects before it all becomes a bit repetitive. Before it all becomes a
Oh,
bit
well,
repetitive.
it's
Before
okay
it
if
all
it's
becomes a bit
repetitive.
repetitive.
With something like
It's
that.
a good thing then that Megan 2.0 is still centered around the reigning queen of passive-aggressive asides and burns.
Oh no, I can't take credit for that. That one has your greasy prints all over it.
The sequel does go through growing pains as it jettisons its horror DNA to make space for more sci-fi and action elements, but Megan herself comes out on the other side of all that quite well.
You threatened to rip out my tongue and put me in a wheelchair.
I was upset.
Johnstone builds up some good anticipation for her return through the first act, hinting at her persisting consciousness through some clever use of smart home devices that remind us both of her
That
wide-ranging
robot reminds me of
capabilities
that-
and her venomous wit.
What's it called? Black
Megan
Mirror?
2.0
Or
does
Mirror Black?
stretch
I
to
keep
explain
getting
why
confused.
Megan
Black
would
Mirror,
want
maybe?
to give up the
That
freedom of
episode with,
transcending a physical
Miley
form in the
Cyrus,
first place,
when
but
she was
she's
in that
such a
little robot,
reliably delightful presence
right?
that it's kind of a forgivable
Her
lot.
consciousness.
What the hell is this? You put me in this plastic Teletubby?
Plus, she's an inherently physical being on screen. Through multiple spectacularly realized hardware versions in Megan 2.0, Megan conveys menace and or humor with the slightest change of expression. And that's before you even get to dizzying physiological and I guess philosophical questions like why Megan needs to confidently toss a towel over her shoulder after a tough workout. Which, by the way, that
they
image has
just
been
did that.
living rent-free in my head for some
Supposed
time
to,
now.
like,
That clip came out a
emulate,
little while
like,
ago,
the humans,
and I have
you
been
know,
racking my
how
brain
they do
trying to
that.
figure out why a robot, an android girl, would need a towel after
You don't
a
need to
workout.
think too hard. You know, sometimes
Please let
they
me know what
do
you think
this
in the
kind of
comments
thing.
because
They
I have
think too hard about
absolutely
it.
no idea. On the
fuck
more
cares,
emotional
really, you know,
region
it's
of Megan
just
2.0's hard drive,
emulating,
there's not as much
and it's
schmaltz
meant
as you
for
might
the audience
expect from
to-
an android yearning
supposed
for
to, like, maybe
humanity.
laugh at that or
Even as
something,
Megan's
'cause,
feelings on the subject
what
gain
the
a lot
humans
more
do.
nuance when she's given a second chance to protect Katie. Megan approaches her own autonomy with, dare I say it, humility. It was nice to see Megan grapple with these questions in a way that was realistic and true to the character. It is sort of a coming-of-age tale for Megan, and that was kind of a great part of the story.
Just wanted to say great job on those actuators.
There's some irony worth noting
God, I
here
love
that
that
Megan's
Moonchun dummy.
success as a
And her
cinematic
moves.
creation comes down
Fuck yeah.
entirely
Oh,
to the
yeah.
craftspeople and artists responsible for bringing her to life. Jenna Davis's stellar voice work and Amy Donald's continually impressive physical performance, the seamless animatronic and visual effects, Johnstone's deadpan one-liners, steeped in the persona established by Akilah Cooper's Megan's screenplay, all of it represents very human work that succeeds in elevating the character into a franchise standard bearer, even though her sophomore outing fails to keep all the plates around her spinning all the time.
You would like us to rebuild a deranged robot in order to catch another one.
Would you prefer I gave you a printout that you can read at your own pace?
Megan 2.0 is admirable in its attempts to broaden the franchise's horizons, and finds some success in forcing the characters to work together against common enemy Amelia. Jenna Davis and Amy Donald's joint performance as Megan unsurprisingly steals the show once again, but Allison Williams and Violet McGraw hold down the human side of the story well. The big shift away from horror and towards sci-fi action represents a lateral move for the sequel though, essentially just applying a different set of tropes
Lateral.
to the Megan character. It's an adjustment that works better than you may expect, maybe not as well as you'd hope, but Megan herself is as hilarious and off-putting as ever, and that will likely be enough for her most ardent
Okay,
fans
so
to
it got
dance
an
with.
okay. That's fine.
Thank you so much for watching. For
I'm
more
still
movie
very
reviews, check out what we
interested,
thought of
you know.
28 years later in F1, and as always, keep it right here on IGN.
Okay, super cool. So it didn't get bad, it got okay. So, and then you kind of, what I do is I watch something like this, whatever score to give it, and then I take it from there. It's almost like a jumping point whenever I watch these things. Not only that, if I'm able, but I really can't. Siskel and Ebert are no more. Ebert and Roper are no more. Typically, when I, when I watch my professional reviews, they're, you know, a video in video form. But anyways, I use it as a jumping point, or also I will cross-reference it. Like, say, if I'm able, or okay, for example, if this was a game, and IGN gave a game a 6, then I would look at GameSpot, all right, and see what they gave it, and say they gave it like an 8. Okay, this IGN gave something a 6, GameSpot gave the same thing an 8, and if I'm able to, I really try to find like a third and fourth, but really at least 2 or 3, and compare those numbers, and it kind of gives me a little bit of a range, right? Not that I'm basing my opinion on it. Then when I go see it, I keep those in mind and what they said, those numbers. And, you know, if I really like it, then, and that's the thing. I guess nowadays when they score things, God, excuse me, they go like 6, 7, 8. There's no like halves, or they got rid of that whole point system, which I wish they didn't. For me, I can really fine tune it. I can go, well, like a 7.25 or 7.5. I go in quarters, you see what I mean? 8.75, you know, something like that. And then I just give my review based on how I like it, tossing what they think out the window, but it gives me like an advanced look of what to look at, what their complaints were, and maybe what they're complaining about is something maybe I have no problem with. So, like, for example, here, he said, oh, how did he put it? The director is too beholden. I like that. Too beholden on another sci-fi, you know, franchise or film, like one of the greatest ones. Of course, talking about Terminator 2. I think he kind of said that in a derogatory way, right? Like negative, like he's meaning it's not. He didn't sound too positive about that. For me, that doesn't bother me. I kind of like that he took that idea. Of course, I kind of thought that anyways from the very first trailer I saw. So, but that's what I do, and that's what goes through my head. Okay, so I used to watch a lot of regular average Joe YouTubers, but everyone I pretty much used to watch don't, most of them are all gone, or don't do reviews anymore. But we would all watch each other's videos and comment, and we kind of you can say like we bonded. We all became YouTube friends and YouTube movie community and friends. But nowadays, everyone, they just seem like they'll watch one person's review, and whether they're praising it or ripping on it or whatever, they all follow, and they use the same words. You can see it. They don't have a thought of their own. They just kind of follow their things. Not everyone, okay? All right, not everyone, but a lot of it that I've seen nowadays. There's like a few I've seen that are pretty good, really good. One person I think that seems like she has her own opinion. Geeky Mama review. That's one person. She seems like she goes with her heart and doesn't listen to what the majority of the people say. And I'm not just going with the people that are going against opposite of, or if something gives it good, I look for the ones that give it bad, and vice versa. If the majority is bad, I'm actively seeking out the ones that do it good. I just know, because when I've seen those same movies, it's something you get a taste for over time when you start watching some specific YouTubers and kind of test the waters and get to know them a bit more. You learn that you gravitate more towards their opinions. It's kind of aligns more with the things you would say and think about. So that's how it goes for me. Okay, so that is it. There's actually a couple of movies that I'm gonna do trailer reaction for. I thought I wasn't gonna do it, but it should, when the recommendation stuff pop up. So what is this? Okay, so I'm gonna do it.